Hello everyone, I'm Pablo Cano, Director of the International Project Office of the Catholic University of Murcia and Director of the LIVERUR Project. First of all, thank you very much for being present today. I welcome you to the last day of the Knowledge Transfer Session, event which will deal with the main result of the project. I give way to our partners Wolfgang from CSI, who will be the moderator of today's session. Best regard and thank you very much.
Okay, good morning everybody. My name is Wolfgang Haider. I'm a researcher at the Center for Social Innovation in Vienna in Austria. And I'm a project partner of the LIVERUR project that brings today this knowledge transfer session to you. Thank you all for joining. I think we have an interesting program for this third day of our knowledge transfer sessions. And today we will be discussing some of the key LIVERUR outputs, what they mean for rural development. And we have invited a nice set of speakers that will share with you some of our key results. And in the second part of our roundtable, we will also have some external people that will be talking about their projects and how they implemented rural innovation frameworks in their projects. So before we start, we will just have a short video on the LIVERUR project.
We can all live a better life in a rural environment, learn from other people's customs, connect with nature, treat ourselves to the simple pleasures of life. However, people who live in small rural communities don't always have the resources they need to live life the way they want to. They become discouraged. And especially young people travel to cities looking for a better life. LIVERUR firmly believes in giving opportunities to these communities, in creating wealth and setting an example with a circular, inclusive, sustainable, exemplary economy. We believe that these rural communities are perfect incubators for working with knowledge, entrepreneurship and passion. And this is why we choose these places to transform into living labs, where people and small and medium agriculture enterprises can meet to work towards a common goal, turning their day-to-day way of life into a better opportunity for everyone. Thanks to the support from the EU, LIVERUR has formed a group of professionals and researchers to explore different skills and existing business structures to create a new innovative business model based on principles and values that make the rural economy a global example of sustainability. LIVERUR will share this knowledge among all parties involved to build a collective intelligence, to spread a model that will guide us on the path to creating a better future together.
So I hope it works now. I got kicked out for a second, but I hope I'm back online and you can hear me. And I would like to introduce to you now our first two speakers. We have invited Karin Heinschink from the Federal Institute of Agricultural Economics, Rural and Mountain Research in Austria to give us some insights into one of the key deliverables of the LIVERUR project, the so-called RAIN concept, which is a business model concept for rural areas. And she is together with Thomas Böhm from the Regional Development Agency of Südburgenland, who is actually one of our representatives from the pilot region in the Burgenland, in the southern part of the Burgenland, one of Austria's states. Yeah. And so without much further ado, I will give the word to Karin. Please, Karin.
Hello everyone, can you hear me? Okay, so hello again, welcome. This presentation was prepared by PAP and by RMB. My name is Karin and Thomas will take over later. In this presentation, we're going to look at the RAIN concept in theory, in practice, and the space in between. And we're going to learn about the pilot region Südburgenland. So what is RAIN? RAIN stands for Regional Circular Living Lab. Circular as in circular economy and living lab as in stakeholder involvement and user-centered approach. It is a structure that's designed for developing a business model, either right from the beginning, or you can use it when you have already something set up. You can use it just for the creative phases, or you can use it to formulate concrete measures, concrete action plans. So you can use it to start or to improve something. And let me draw you a picture. Let's say we see a problem or an opportunity and we want to find a real solution. That is our ambition. But we also know that our solution is influenced by many different things that happen outside our project idea. Like this. So it's raining different things that influence our project. They are interlinked. They might affect our idea positively or negatively, a lot or not at all. So we need to get an overview of that. And this is where RAIN comes in. RAIN takes all these buzzwords and organizes them in a way that we can work through the complexity. Then we can formulate concrete action plans and hopefully come up with the real solution that we intend, and the solution is represented by the rows here. RAIN consists of 3 layers, the RAIN core elements, the principles, and the real-life setting. The core elements basically are the common chapters in a business plan, like marketing and distribution, research and innovation, people, and so on. The RAIN principles are the innovative bit in the model. It means you have the ambition to integrate ecological sustainability, economic sustainability, open innovation, stakeholder involvement, and so on. All of these concepts are integrated in every core element, in every piece of the puzzle. And then we have the real-life setting. It's what happens around the business model, but is still relevant for the business model. And when I say business model, I also speak of project and non-profit activities. So you can basically use it for different types of tasks. So how do we put this theoretical concept into practice? We could start out with a brainstorming exercise. We invite all the stakeholders and we think together about the question. The business model is embedded in which setting? We think about that. About the economic context, the environment and climate, societal context and infrastructure, and so on. Once we have a good overview from many different perspectives, we can think which of those aspects is relevant to the business model and how. So we somehow assess whether the real-life setting, these particular aspects, are neutral or if they are an opportunity or threat or a challenge to our business or project or idea. And once we have the overview, we think what of this is unchangeable and what can be managed and how do we deal with it? And this is crucial because once we know what's going on outside the business, we formulate concrete action plans. What are our goals? How are we going to achieve those? Who is responsible? And by when do we want to achieve this? So in the action plan, we we integrate everything that is important, that's going on outside the business, but is still important for our business. And it's very similar with the RAIN principles. So again, we can do a brainstorming task, for example, or some other creativity task, or we can do research, and we ask ourselves in each piece of the puzzle, how can we make this, for example, economically sustainable, ecologically sustainable? How can we draft this piece of the puzzle in a way that it becomes circular? So again, we formulate the goals. How do we want to see the RAIN principles in practice? We formulate those goals. We say, how are we going to achieve it? By when do we want to achieve this? And who is responsible? And after that, of course, you can, when you have everything determined like that, you can evaluate, rethink, and restart at the later phase. And maybe everything turned out as you wanted, but otherwise you can adjust. Now I'm going to talk about an example that I borrowed from our colleagues at the Valle de Cavaliere meeting or workshop. The colleagues presented a problem. So in the real-life setting, we found out that there is no public transport to the next village, and some villagers don't have cars. So basically it means they don't have access to important services like food stores, pharmacies, or post office. And the project is to set up a local voluntary transport service. And now we are thinking, okay, how can we implement the RAIN principles? And we pick one piece of the puzzle, we pick product, services, and process, and go into detail. How do we want to make the service socially sustainable? Our goal is, for example, to keep the system up for as long as needed. And we're going to set measures that foster the commitment of voluntary drivers, that find a large enough crowd of voluntary drivers so that the service is not too strenuous for them. And we are going to sort out insurance for drivers so that they are covered when something goes wrong. These are some measures that could be taken to make it socially sustainable. We define the deadline, for example, mid-September, and a person who is responsible for looking after this social sustainability and the measures, and so on. So you can do this for every piece of the puzzle and for every RAIN principle. And that brings me to the space in between theory and practice. We have learned from our workshops and talking to different people who have thought about the RAIN concept and applied it, that one very important point is to appoint a living lab coordinator. This person will, or a group of persons, will keep everything together. The other thing is that the living lab needs to decide whether they want to use the RAIN concept to work out something that is very, very detailed, or whether they want to just use it as a guideline for a creative task, so they don't overlook any important aspects. Then another aspect is that you don't have to include every principle in every core element. You can start out with something and then let it grow. A very nice thing about this kind of work, about working with living labs and about applying the RAIN concept, is that there is a lot of diversity. People bring in their different perspectives, and hopefully they will, after a while, have a common understanding. But be aware, everything that is produced in the living lab is probably an incomplete snapshot. So after some time, it makes sense to think about what has been produced and elaborated before, and to revise it, to adapt it to the actual situation. And my very last point is that We have seen that the RAIN concept provides a structure, but the majority of the work still lies with the people in the Living Lab. That's it from my side, and I'm now going to hand over to Thomas.
Thank you very much, Karin. Greetings to all our visitors today. I would like to briefly present our activities within the LIVERUR project and tell about on how we have used this RAIN model in the pilot region this Karin presented before. Let me show you first a picture from our region. That's a protected area and a nature park with a very small structured landscape with orchard meadows in it and small vineyards, and between with the so-called Kellerstöckel are located. What are Kellerstöckel? Kellerstöckel are old wine production infrastructure, now renovated and upgraded for holiday apartments. And the aim of our living lab is to set the structures for a continuous learning and improving of an initiative for a nature tourism and sustainable tourism based in this protected area with the small and micro enterprises, and to use and to secure these historical buildings in this landscape, and to set a cooperation among the owners of the wine cellars, cooperate with all the further regional producers, with the tourism operators and the service providers for a well-integrated, sustainable regional development. What are the major challenges in this region? This is a region on the border. There are very poor transport connections, a problem with migration, few job opportunities, and the untapped tourist potential. And we found in this protected area more than 1,000 of this historical buildings, and only few of them are used for tourism or used anymore for any other thing. And now this initiative is developing the region in a kind of resort, which means bringing together all the treasures of the region. That means work with all the small enterprises, with these little farmers, with these owners of these old wine cellars, to develop this idea of this small and sustainable tourism in this region. And how now we worked in this region with this new RAIN model together with the colleagues from PAP and ZSI. We organized as the first step a train-the-trainer workshop for the staff of the Nature Park organization, for the leader management, so that the regional actors, the staff and the regional external experts get familiar with this RAIN model. And then we started different workshops and different activities in this pilot region. And by these meetings, we always took 2 or 3 of the core elements and worked on them step by step. We saw that a success factor in this regional development processes is to bring together the right people from the different sectors to work together on new ideas for their own region. An important step in this region was the fact that it was possible to obtain a funding from the state government for the farmers for the renovation of this old wine cellars. This was a really good step to go forward. Also an important step was the foundation of a new agricultural business through the Nature Park Association for the vineyard conservation and for the development of new products. And at the moment, we work on a sponsorship model to secure the management in the next time. What are the main results? When we started with the activity 2017, we have 30 of these old wine cellars used for tourism. At the moment, we have 110, and some are currently still being renovated. There is a new digital tool that links all the region's services together. And there are new products under the Nature Park label, such as the new apple juice from the orchard meadows, and some products are still in process. At last, I want to say that our management, financial aspects, resources, but often the actors in the region only focuses on product and marketing. They have a new idea, a new product, and just go on. But it's very, very important to tackle all these core elements. And as Karin said, repeat it 1 and 2 years after you started the process, so you are sure to be sustainable with your idea. That's from my side, from our pilot region. Thank you very much for listening.
I think it shows very well how these elements developed in the LIVERUR project can be implemented in the region, and how they can be used, how they be put from theory to the practice. And the case of South and to make this rain approach also usable to or accessible to a bigger audience and to more people. Another very important output of the LIVERUR project is the RAIN platform, which is an online platform that provides useful tools to entrepreneurs and other stakeholders that are involved in rural business models and rural development, with a really nice, innovative, interactive environment. And our colleague Daniel Capitán from Wireless Telecom will now introduce you to this RAIN platform, its benefits, and how to use it.
Okay, thank you, Wolfgang, for your words, for introducing me. Well, in this case, I will present you the RAIN platform, that is a hub of knowledge that will help us to implement the RAIN business model in different pilot regions. Okay, if you allow me, I will start. Okay, showing you a little bit, giving you a little overview of the platform. Well, in this case, we will in the platform we have a different set of tools, okay, that will help as we are commenting to implement the RAIN business model. In this case, we count on a business model selection that can allow us to, for example, know in a little bit, in a little sense, then the level of different key parameters that will be part of the future RAIN business model that, for example, a business wants to create. Okay, here we can see briefly what are the main parameters, as for example, in the level lab approach, we can see the user-centered approach, the multi-actor, level of engagement, the openness of the business, and so on. And regarding the economic sustainability, we can, for example, check the innovation of type or the type of innovation of the regional conditions, and also the resources. Regarding social sustainability, which is also another part of the RAIN model, we have to take into account the health and well-being, the quality and education, and so on. And finally, regarding sustainability, we have to take into account aspects as climate and action and biodiversity, resource management, and well, product and material generation. Okay. On the other hand, after this brief overview, we will see more in the concrete tools that we will have for this. Okay. Regarding the toolbox, it is well, a set of tools that will help us to build the basic knowledge that you can have and you will need for setting a business in a rural area. Okay. In this case, there is also a tutorial for giving you a brief overview of how implement these tools and also how to tackle them. And last but not the least, the ring concept. Okay, we will have also the ring concept within the platform, explaining a little bit what are the main elements and so on, in order to have a clear comprehension by the rural entrepreneurs and rural businesses of the ring concept. Okay, this is the main view that can have the users that are coming from the outside of the platform. Okay, I will also, well, I will go briefly in the pilot for the pilot regions, which is other section that we have for checking any advance in the different pilots. Also we have the LIVERUR mocks, which are publicly available for any kind of user. For example, right now we have the communication workshop, which and give us the basic tools for fluent and relevant communication to stakeholders. Well, let's see. Let's log in the platform and let's see. Okay. Well, I have to remark that if you want to register in the login, you should click on register and complete a very brief form that giving basic information, as for example the type of company. Here you can have to check if you are an NGO, an SME, a freelancer, or if you are an a large company. You have to complete some information, and then you will be able to access to the complete content of the REN platform. Okay, so well, let's see the concept. Okay. Here in the platform, well, we can find, for example, news that are related to business and also to the economic aspects or social aspects of the rural areas that, for example, can be highly interesting for following the relevant, evolution of the current trends in the rural areas. Okay, this is something that is something that complementary of the REN business model. Okay, as I have commented, here we have the REN tools that I have briefly presented before. Okay, I will introduce you in a wider way now. Here, for example, we have the business model analysis, where, for example, an entrepreneur or maybe an SME can complete a questionnaire that will offer you the knowledge of where your business has maybe some weaknesses and where you have a strong strengthness that maybe can be exploited. Okay, if we can go to very briefly to the questionnaire, we can see that, well, you have to complete some points. Okay, we can do it if we want in some sense a little bit random, but in order to show you at the end a result that you can obtain after that. This result enables us to make some recommendations about our business. This will enable us to identify the strengths and also the weaknesses, and also will give us some resources to implement the REN business model in your future business or your current business. After this, we submit the form, and then we obtain the evaluation. Okay, this evaluation, it's accordingly to what we have been completing and during the questionnaire, and after that we will have some recommendations, and also some resources about how can we maybe implement or maybe exploit in a better way our strengths, and also maybe how can we correct some of our weaknesses. Okay, regarding the 4 main pillars of the RAIN business model. If we go to the next RAIN tool, okay, the toolbox, we can see a tutorial as is the same that we have been seeing in the home page, and here we can find the purpose of the different tools, and it also supports us to define exactly your business, applying also the RAIN business model criteria. Here also we have a tutorial that allow us to understand in a little bit the RAIN concept, and also how to implement the purpose. Here you have some tools that can be implemented. For example, a SWOT analysis that can be very helpful for detecting some strengths or maybe some weaknesses within your business, and so on. And also different resources that can be very helpful for starting a business or building up a business. Okay. Finally, we have the RAIN concept, where is explained in the following lines, and also we can also check additional information in these 2 links. Okay, and also we can find everything explained very well for maybe a new user that want to implement the RAIN concept. Okay, if you go to the next section, which is open learning, this section is only available for those users that are registered in the platform. In this case, all the LIVERUR mocks, which are publicly available for any kind of users, are right now available. Okay, for any kind of user. In this case, we can find information about gender gap, and also additional resources about this topic, and how, for example, improve them in our businesses. Okay, for example, regarding internationalization, which is something that can be relevant for a rural business, we can have different kind of webinars that can have resources for initial businesses, and also additional resources to current public funding and public administration networks that can help us in this process. Okay. In all the different sections, we can have, as I have already mentioned, some additional resources that can be exploited for the topic itself that we are talking about. For example, if we talk about internationalization, as we have already mentioned, we can have the additional resources, not only for enlarging and also improving our business, but also for the relevant administrations in this sense. Okay. The same for digitalization, and also the same for support your businesses and sustainability. I will show you the LIVERUR mocks. Okay, again, it's the same section that we can find publicly. In this case, we have only one available workshop. In the next months, we will have more. The next workshop will be a tutorial of all the platform, showing the main aspects, and also teaching in some sense how to use it in an overall way. The communication workshop, we have first a set of videos where we can find the main aspects of the affluent and good communication in a company. Okay, in each video, we can have a little pills of information on knowledge, and after them, we can check a set of documentation of the workshop where we can find additional information of the project. Also, it's available for downloading and in different languages, as we can find it below. Apart from this information, we can have also additional information that is contained in the annexes of the MOOC. Okay. After that, we have a questionnaire that should be completed after the all the visualization of the videos and also the content, and it will support us to have a wider to consolidate the knowledge that we can be obtaining during the MOOC. Apart from the open knowledge section, we have the ring community section, which is a section where we can communicate with other users that are in the different Livru labs. This section is also available for any kind of user coming from other Livru labs, apart from those that are included in the project. Also, any kind of user can be posting here. We can also receive different messages from other users, and we can exchange knowledge in the different forum threads, where we can have different discussions for example, per Livru lab and also per topic. Okay. Here we can check the members that currently are registered in the platform, and the latest posts. Here we have also a little summary about our posts and our information, and also regarding all the different posts and the member activity that you can find in the platform. Okay. Apart from this, we can, for example, edit our information and our avatar and check our current registration information. And if we want to edit, we can do it here. So this will be mainly the overall view of the platform. So if you have any questions or something to comment.
I think it really showed well the different aspects and the richness of the services that can be accessed via the RAIN platform, and really the dense knowledge pool that is accessible to people working on entrepreneurial ideas or rural development projects, or any kind of innovation in an ecosystem in a rural setting. So I think that was really a good overview on kind of the interlink between the practice and the theory, and how we put it together on the RAIN platform. And as we have looked now on a bit more of the practice part and the theory part, and have kind of had an insight on how we want to share and bring out knowledge that we have created in the project, now we have invited another project partner from LIVERUR, Martina Ocelli, who will speak to us and talk to us about the policy aspects of the LIVERUR project, and how what we learned for sustainability transition in rural areas, and how LIVERUR outputs can contribute to that. So Martina, please, I invite you to go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Thank you very much, and good morning to all our listeners today. My job, which is not that easy, is to try to dense all the complexity and the many information that you have heard before when it comes to the RAIN model as well as to the RAIN platform, and to the trajectory of the sustainable transition of rural areas, which is a policy trajectory that we have at the European level at the moment. As Wolfgang underlined, I have been a member of the LIVERUR project until very recently, this is why I'm happy to see that the project is coming to final results, and I'm honored to try to transmit you how this final result can be used to boost rural innovation policies. So next slide, please. Okay, so rural innovation as quite it's a quite interesting aspect, because most of the people think that innovation is happening in dense and populated area, when instead rural area, quite marginalized often, they are the heart of a new type of innovation, which is more circular and more connected to the living lab. There is actually no opposition between urban area and rural areas, and some of our pilots show that clearly. So there is actually no need to underestimate the potentiality of rural innovation also in marginalized area. Rural innovation policy, as it is intended at the moment by the policymakers and the practitioner, is involving three main aspects. The first one is that it's natural resource based. So we need to go back to use the inputs that we have locally, and we have the necessity to develop our model in a circular way in order to reduce the waste of the resources and improve the efficiency of the system. The other two aspects are a little less known to the general public. The first one is a smart utilization of the tacit knowledge. Rural areas are extremely rich in when it comes to the knowledge, especially the local knowledge, the knowledge of the local environmental context. So rural innovation policies right now are boosting for a smart utilization of this knowledge, which is unfortunately most of the time not encoded. This is why LIVERUR, with the living lab approach, is actually developing an holistic methodology that fill this gap. And beyond the first two principles, we also have the use of social cooperation and innovation to overcome barriers. There is no need to explain to you probably how many barriers can be encountered when the rural innovation will take place in marginalized areas. So cooperation and social innovation, which is intrinsically in the nature of rural societies, can be used to boost and nourish solutions to barriers that are identified. Next one. So the first question that came into my mind actually was suggested by Wolfgang, but I will take credit for it. It's what have we learned regarding the sustainable transition of rural areas during our LIVERUR project? Well, we have few lessons, and the first one that really struck me, and this is why I put it on the first, on the top one, is that rural entrepreneurs are often facing a double disconnection. The first one is a disconnection given by the marginality of the area. It can be a geographical disconnection, but it can also be an ICT-related disconnection, a technological gap, or a knowledge gap, a lack of interaction with local universities, rather than lack of inputs. In a general, a disconnection which results into a physical marginalization or a financial one. However, when it comes to the disconnection, we have seen another one, which is the one with the local actors in the territory. Developing the living lab that as we have done it in the past 3 years, we realized that sometimes local actors do not communicate with each other. So Living Lab was quite an interesting exercise, because sometimes people were in the physical place, so not disconnected physically, but disconnected in terms of the mutual opportunities that one actor can generate for the other actors. The second lessons that we have learned regards a shock. I mean, we always intend to address something probably more related to climate, but then we had quite a strong shock, which is actually health related, and it was the pandemic. So it actually emerged some lessons also from that event too. The first one is that rural areas showed strength during the pandemic. One of that was that our LIVERUR partners, our LIVERUR pilots, actually reported that some of their products were valued during the pandemic because they could sell them directly, and in general, agriculture had a kind of reinstatement of the value when it comes to the pandemic. However, there also were weaknesses, of course, and one of that was deeply related to the fact that people in the rural areas and business entrepreneurs were not so easy, for example, were not so handy to switch from a physical business to maybe an online kind of business, for example, online selling. So also in that shock, we learned that sustainable transition can mean that you need to also move towards a higher digitalization. Then we learned the value of networking and co-creation towards sustainable transition. None of our pilot actors could have made the transition that we are evaluating in our policy brief at the moment without the work and the network, which is quite interesting. They are two words nested into one another. And as Karin was underlined before me, the other interesting lessons that the RAIN model underline for the sustainable transition, and in general what we have learned for a sustainable transition of our pilot area, is that it can be an environmental sustainability, and it's actually extremely welcome, of course, but nothing can hold up without an economic sustainability as well. So LIVERUR was meant to create business models, and it was exactly in that direction that we needed to work, not simply to increase the environmental and social sustainability of the system, but also the competitiveness and the economic sustainability. If rural entrepreneurs don't see their business flying, they are gonna fly out the rural area, which is something we learn quite immediately. And then when a sustainable transition, we have learned that the value chain as it is at the moment, it's changing. So also finding actors outside the traditional value chain, they can be new type of customers like the nomad digital entrepreneurs rather than app-based business model. They can be used utilized by rural entrepreneurs to boost their activities and transit towards a more sustainable system. Next one, please. So how LIVERUR can support all this different environment. LIVERUR is based on one key concept that the two presentations before me have explained really well, which is the regional circular living lab business model, which is quite complex to say, but actually it's quite easy to grasp. So rural innovation must be local to work, and all the RAIN models toolbox pieces and the platform itself is working for engaging all the relevant actors at the local level. Then if you're interested, you can export your successful story, for example, in the RAIN community. But the first thing is to highlight, understand, and co-create with the local people and local actors in your value chain. Then, of course, rural innovation must be green, and we are facing tremendous climate challenges, and we can't help ourselves to think that the first base is the circular economy. So all the RAIN models and all the RAIN principle work in a circular economy perspective. We invite you in every single step of our tools to use your resources in an efficient way. And as an entrepreneur in the rural area, sometimes it's not that obvious. So this is why sit down and co-create with the instrument might be quite powerful. Next one, please. Rural innovation is also social. We talked about that. Rural areas are an intrinsic knowledge fabric of different notions. So we don't want the sustainable transition to be just an environmental or an economic one, but we want that to be also a just transition. Rural societies, in our perspective, need to retake the possibility of producing goods that are valuable also because they have a cultural meaning. And probably as an Italian, we have a little bias toward that, but it's undeniable the fact that rural areas have a specific culture which can be found nowhere else. So in this perspective, the Living Lab approach, putting all together the different actors, is cultivating the cultural and social and also integrating elements of our model. And finally, as I said it before, the business part. So every step of our LIVERUR model as well, RAIN platform, the RAIN models, everything is also developing the perspective of making the business of rural entrepreneur competitive. So at the end of the story, we want to sell a good, which is, we want to sell a product which is good, but it's also well placed on the market, and we have some very good example in that in different pilot areas of our project. Next one, please. So the question is, how can we do this in practice? Has a knowledge transfer session, words are nice, but probably examples are better. So the first one I'm going to present belongs to the LIVERUR project, and then I'm going to present another example, which is actually a sister area, non-officially inserted into the LIVERUR project. So you can tell me we are not playing safe in the house. But in a certain way, it's a nice area that can be that can immediately utilize our instrument in an effective way. So the first area is the Azores. I hinted at Portugal, but it's actually a little bit more in that, but it was not possible to include it in the map. So next one, please. The Azores was a very nice case. They have a direct organic product in the Azores. The first day of the roundtable was dedicated to the different pilot experience, so I will not go through that much in detail. But basically what they did was to increase the quality and the sustainability of the local milk supply chain. And I mean, there is nothing probably, I mean, my friends in the Azores will not get me wrong, but there's probably nothing more marginalized and rural than working in an island like the Azores. So testing our instruments over there was quite interesting. And Biazorica, an organic dairy cooperative project partner, used the RAIN tool and the RAIN to map the strengths and the challenges, and then to develop the product that was actually aiming for the organic dairy production, which is inserted in also the regional, which is inserted also in the regional stream of rural innovation towards organic farming. So all the different instruments were used, as it was shown before by Thomas in his pilot area, in order to develop a new business model attached also to a new value of the product. The last example I'm going to give you, next slide, please, is the one of a pilot area in Italy, which I'm working on at the moment. They are not part of the LIVERUR project, but they have the perfect setting, for example, to take out our outcomes. Next one. They are again working with dairy products, this time from sheep. And they have numerous challenges. They have a challenge of stakeholder involvement, and each of the challenges can be reconnected to a RAIN principle. The challenge of the stakeholder involvement, they are isolated, so ICT-enabled instruments are quite difficult to actuate. Usually they are quite low input, but the circular economy perspective is quite low. So in this type of environment, which is actually always contained in a country where we have already worked in, constituted the perfect, let's say, sister pilot area we will look for to include in the exploitation of our results and the platform and the testing of our instruments. Okay, so thank you very much. I hope I got you a little sense of how our elements can be used to boost rural innovation policies. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Martina. Thank you, Martina, for this quite inspiring presentation, I would say, because really quite a few interesting points and reflections that you raised. And we unfortunately don't really have the time to discuss further on this right now, but I know that in the afternoon session there will probably be some space, and I think maybe it's also a good opportunity to connect to the external speakers that will join us in the afternoon, and to see how their experiences kind of match with what you have been explaining now. But for now, I would like to go to the next presentation, for which we invited Jelena Mazaj from the CESI Institute, Center for European Studies and Initiatives. She's also part of the LIVERUR Project Consortium. And we have heard now about the policy side, the practice side, and the theory side, and a bit on the digital environment that we have built up. And Jelena now will focus on what we have learned in terms of building capacities. So how did LIVERUR and how will LIVERUR continue to contribute to building capacities in rural areas to contribute to a sustainable transition and a sustainable development?
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So I would like to share my presentation with you. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this conversation today. Yes. I have some kind of troubles, but now you can hear me, right? Thank you very much. So once again, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this presentation today. And first of all, I would like to say that JOSENEA is very happy to be a part of this with this team and this proposal. We are located in Palermo and we represent the European Center of Studies and Initiatives. Unfortunately, we didn't have possibility to have a piloting territory in this proposal, but we elaborated and collaborated a lot with partners regarding different issues. So this session, actually, with this presentation, I would like to provide some inputs in brief to our stakeholders regarding the development of capacity building of rural areas for rural development. And this will be some kind of sum up or summary of everything what was said before, just to map all the activities, map our tools, and invite our users and our stakeholders to go ahead and to reuse our product which we did. So during this minute, I would like to concentrate my conversation on two main questions, which are dedicated to the analysis, to the representation of the capacities which kind of rural innovation can manage, and at the same time to summarize again tools which LIVERUR offer to the community and to the researchers and to the practitioners in the field of rural development. So first of all, I would like to say that according to the statistics, as you may know, rural areas are representing the half of European territory and around 20% of population. However, we know that this kind of territories, they are less favored regions, and at the same time represent very low GDP according and comparing with other European average numbers. So this underlines that there are a lot of challenges in these territories. But meantime, rural areas are very essential for sustainable development and circular economy. And thus, innovative pathways should be found to spur innovation potential and within nowadays more complex, more dynamic, more challenging environments. So according to us, we believe that the rural innovation should be focused on three main directions. They are linked to the fostering transition and fostering well-being and prosperity in these territories. At the same time, we need to have capacities and we need to build sustainable and resilient communities. And what is also very important is to underline that we need to create strong links between the rural and urban territories. Thus, based on our previous research and consultation with stakeholders, we summarize that and we provide four main drivers for LIVERUR innovation, rural innovation in rural territories, rural areas. The first one is linked to the environment and resilience. And here we're talking about what was mentioned before by Martina. We're talking about global approach and establishment of network of the stakeholders, of local knowledge actors who are aiming can co-create solutions for rural challenges. Here the global approach is very important due to the fact that there are a lot of differences based on cultural, having cultural characteristics or other type of characteristics which cannot be managed at the global level. So to make this kind of transition and to force the innovativeness potential at rural areas, we need first of all concentrate on the global approach. Of course, the second pillar, the second driver is dedicated to the resource efficiency and management. And this is based to the fact that testing the methodologies in the project, we understood that the leader's role, the role of engagers, the multipliers is essential for the innovation development, innovation creation. Thus, there is an importance to have such kind of people in the territory who are able to transfer their knowledge, who are able to engage people and to disseminate information, starting from the communities, going to the customers, and of course, arriving to the policy level. Of course, such kind of collaboration should be based on the trust between the parties. And this is something what is very challenging to reach when we're talking about different dynamics between the different actors. However, we see that having willingness, having common understanding and sharing the same problematics, this kind of trust can be created and partners can collaborate in a very creative and consolidative work. The third and fourth drivers are linked to the competitiveness of small and medium enterprises and rural value chain creation or fostering their development and openness to new technologies and new market. This kind of drivers are based strongly on the development of specific skills of the people working in this area: openness, flexibility, adaptability, collaboration, creativity, everything what fosters innovativeness process. At the same time, without having a strong governance mechanism, it wouldn't be possible to reach good results. So territories entering in this process, stimulation of the rural innovation process, they need to have already established or working on the specific rules, practices, and processes to make the system of governance more stronger and more supportive for local actors. And of course, investing in local infrastructures, digital readiness, digital connectivity, at this moment are very crucial and essential part for innovativeness when we're talking about rural areas. So these are the elements of which we are working during the proposal and during this project implementation. And of course, we came up with different results. And to my point of view, this kind of results we can split in two types. First of all, the results which support the territorial capacities, development of territorial capacities, and the capacities which are linked to organizational and personal skills and competences. So again, based on our research and the early phase of discussion with the users, we identified that innovation in rural area is strongly linked to the debate about the circular economy and dealing with the radical changes, particularly in the way how the resources are managed, shared between the different knowledge actors, and thus inspiring open collaborative approach to innovation and technological development. So that's the first instrument, the first model which we are offering. We are offering the model of circular rural living lab, which actually for us is a framework, an instrument, an integrated instrument would help us to create a rural economy perspective and provide a model how different knowledge actors can work together in one co-shared environment. So this slide actually represents you some snapshot of our concept, and you can see that here we have four main directions when we're talking about the circular rural living lab. So the first one is dedicated to the already mentioned pillars, which are covering environmental resilience, resource efficiency, competitiveness, openness for new market and technologies. Opening such kind of, or working and using a living lab concept, it's important to be to have a good contextual and technological fundamentals, which according to other research are covering strong user involvement or center user approach, good infrastructure, face-to-face and of course online infrastructure, service creation, application of co-creation method and tools which can support stimulation, integration of different local knowledge in one innovation process. Of course, the innovation outcomes and the already mentioned governments which should be should have a very good background and good management structure. The third direction is linked to the circular economy principles. And here, as Martina was already mentioning and other colleagues, we're talking about application of such as principles that are linked to sustainability, customers' need, commercial viability, different scalability, and technological readiness levels of the project or processes. And to finalize this model, we would like to stress the importance of the open innovation concept within all the co-creation process, which is linked to funding opportunities, finance acceptance, and ability to get the funding for new project or already ongoing projects. The process, how we need to co-create solutions together, which part of innovation we're opening to customers or to co-creators or to policymakers, and how we develop these solutions together. And of course, the offering and delivery balance between everything. So this is the instrument that we're offering for different territories, which can be applied and can be tested in their territories based on the specific territorial, cultural characteristics. Meantime, the second part of the results, of course, are linked to these tools which support development of different competences and skills of the staff, organizational capacities. And as already was mentioned, I just would like to underline that there are the main product which we're offering to our stakeholders and to our external interest group is to test the RAIN platform, which, as it was mentioned before, represents the interest and can support different stakeholders such as entrepreneurs and policymaking in development of circular economy solutions and support or to foster supply value chain development. As our colleague said before, the RAIN platform represents a lot of different tools, and here you can find opportunities to evaluate your business model. You can find opportunity to participate in different MOOCs. At the same time, you will find good practices of different territories which propose different elaboration and collaboration tools for co-creation and establishment of links between different stakeholders. And of course, the RAIN concept, it was presented by our colleagues previously. So just to summarize, I would like to say that the project is really very, very rich regarding the results. And to finalize my presentation, I would like the invitation, which is actually inviting you to look for two types of outputs. The outputs which can be interesting, of course, for businesses, for other projects, for initiatives, and for local stakeholders, how to create living lab, how to foster innovative process in rural areas, how to address circularity and sustainability within the process. But at the same time, we provide different scientific outputs, and we invite a research community to contribute on our debates about the LIVERUR project outputs, and to see how this topic can be developed in the future. So that would be the end, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you, Jelena, for your presentation. A very good summary of what LIVERUR has been doing in regards of capacity building, and I think very useful insights into how we can also further use this after the project. And with this, I think we go into the break, a short break, before we return with our second roundtable session of today. And yeah, you can also in the meantime be active on social media and share your thoughts on the presentations and discussion points by using the hashtag LIVERUR Transfer Session. So if you want to engage via social media channels, then you can also do that. But for now, we will go in a 10 minutes break, and then we will be back live again with some presentations from people from our network. Well, welcome back on the third day of our knowledge transfer session of the LIVERUR project. We already had quite an interesting morning session where we were joined by some speakers and colleagues from the LIVERUR project, introducing to us the key outputs and results of the LIVERUR project and some very interesting points on the policy relevance and capacity building approaches that we used, created, and implemented during the LIVERUR project. Now, in the afternoon session, I'm very happy that we can welcome two, or actually three speakers that are external to the project, but that will bring in their experience, once from the practice of implementing actually some of the LIVERUR and RAIN approaches in another context besides the project. And from the JOSENEA project in Navarra in Spain, we will have Jesús and Montse Guerrero speaking to us about their experiences in implementing a living lab. And Jesús, I think, will speak in Spanish, and Montse will be providing a translation to English for us. So please, I invite you to start your presentation.
Sí. Hola, buenos días. Muchas gracias por esta oportunidad. Os voy a contar un poco qué es JOSENEA.
Espera. Ahora, ya, sí.
¿Sí? Buenos días, muchas gracias por esta oportunidad. Os voy a contar un poco qué es JOSENEA BIO. Bueno, es una empresa social que trabaja la inserción laboral de personas en situación de exclusión social y laboral en el mundo rural. Estas personas generalmente no tienen oportunidades laborales por diferentes razones culturales, de edad, de raza, de educación, de nivel cultural, de sexo, etc. JOSENEA trabaja desde hace 20 años distintas actividades empresariales para trabajar esta inclusión social y laboral de estas personas en el mercado laboral. ¿Qué actividades son estas? Pues el cultivo ecológico de plantas aromáticas y medicinales, desde la semilla hasta la taza con marca propia, los servicios ambientales y de jardinería ecológica, la industria agroalimentaria de complemento alimenticio para envasar todas estas plantas con marca propia JOSENEA en el mercado, que las vendemos en el mercado mundial, los servicios turísticos de visitas a la explotación con tienda incluida y la industria del tratamiento de residuos orgánicos para elaborar compost de clase A válido para la agricultura ecológica.
JOSENEA Bio is a social enterprise that has been working more than 20 years in the inclusion of people that has not the same opportunities like others in finding a job and helping them in finding their own opportunities, laboral opportunities in working with the company. And the company has been able to create business with this type of employment, and they have created different products that has been or that are already offered in international markets. That is, for example, the teas, options, aromatics plants, and with their own brand. And also they offer also environmental services, organic gardening, agri-food industry for data supplements, and tourist activities, visiting the cultivation, the ground, the fields, and how showing how they work under organic procedures. And also they are able to create their own compost based on the management of organic waste. Next.
¿Cómo es nuestra actividad? Bueno, desde el año 2002 trabajamos de forma ecológica y utilizando la economía circular en todas nuestras actividades. Por ejemplo, recogemos y utilizamos el agua de lluvia de todos nuestros edificios e invernaderos para su utilización en todas nuestras instalaciones. Tenemos placas solares y aerogeneradores para producir el 100% de toda la energía que utilizamos en la plantación. No tenemos contratos ni tomas de ninguna empresa eléctrica. Nuestros secaderos son solares con calderas de biomasa de diseño y construcción propia. Nuestras construcciones son todas de bioconstrucción con composteras, no tienen pozas sépticas. Los abonos los producimos nosotros en nuestra planta de residuos orgánicos que
It seems that
including the rural talent of people, and they're able to produce products always under circular processes, and they have a complete source of resources, renewable resources, that is material but also energy. So they're able to regenerate water. They have water flows, circular flows of water regeneration. They have solar panels, wind turbines. They produce their own energy 100%, and also with self-construction of facilities that are able to gather the energy. This is the case, for example, for the drying process of fruits, for example, with solar power and also with biomass boiler. It is key, the bioconstruction process of the buildings. And of course, they manufacture their own compost. That is the key input, again, to soil for natural capital regeneration. And of course, people is the key resource, how to say, the power of the company's people that is working. and they are able to reinsert these people into the labor market. So they work with people for some years, and then when people is already able to work outside in JOSENEA, they go to other companies. So this is the key aim of JOSENEA, but always under circular processes. Next.
Sí. Bueno, ¿cuál es nuestro proyecto? El objetivo es convertir toda esta actividad en un Living Lab, es decir, un punto de encuentro de todos los agentes de Navarra, nuestra provincia, para experimentar cómo llevar a la práctica la combinación de la creación de valor con productos concretos y garantizando la regeneración social y natural del entorno, usando fuentes renovables de energía y agua. Queremos abrir una nueva actividad asociada a la educación, la formación y el turismo a través de la apertura de un parque de la economía circular visitable. Esta actividad pretende concienciar y formar a las personas en economía circular, poner en valor la economía y el empleo verde, trabajar para fomentar el desarrollo rural de las zonas en riesgo de despoblación, trabajar la formación de personas en exclusión social y crear un Living Lab de cooperación público-privada con la herramienta RAIN, que ha creado la Universidad de Murcia, el cual ya estamos utilizando.
Please, next slide, maybe. Okay, the aim of this project, based on all the work done during these last 20 years, is that to build the Rural Circular Living Lab in JOSENEA. That means to be able to be the meeting point for our region and abroad, where to experiment and to test how we can build a circular economy real, based on social regeneration first, of course, natural regeneration second, and also to generate products and business that is able to create wealth for all of us. This is all, of course, located in rural areas where with a lot of problems with employment. And of course, the use of renewable energy is based and also focusing on water sources. The thing of the Rural Living Lab, they have the activities, but we have worked with JOSENEA in defining and using the tool of RAIN so that we can build this business model structure, more structured, that is very useful for identification of other agents that should be working together with JOSENEA. One of the most important things is JOSENEA is a living lab led by a private organization that works closely with university, with people, with the municipality, with all the visits they have already, but they are close to have an agreement with the public authority to be together in these 4P partnerships to make it real in short term, so that the Living Lab can be created but also defined. Next, please.
¿Qué queremos conseguir en JOSENEA? Pues ser un lugar de co-creación de ideas y de divulgación de la economía circular. Pretendemos la inserción laboral a través de la formación en economía verde de trabajadores que no tengan oportunidades en el mundo rural. La formación de estudiantes en economía circular, me refiero a estudiantes y universitarios. La concienciación de la población en esta economía. Servir de modelo de economía circular a otros interesados. Fomentar la no despoblación de los entornos rurales por falta de modelos productivos más allá de la agricultura y de la ganadería. Vincularnos con otros proyectos europeos que trabajan esta temática. Conseguir que vengan como mínimo 15.000 personas de todo el mundo cada año a visitarnos. Y traer, a partir de unidades didácticas, a todos los escolares de nuestros entornos. Todo esto con personas en situación de dificultad, personas a las que nadie quiere. Muchas gracias.
Please, next slide. As you can see, we have used the RAIN framework for the definition of the business model. Next slide. Yeah. Please, next. How does JOSENEA want to achieve this living lab? They want JOSENEA to be a place for co-creation, that people that comes there, can share their ideas and disseminate how the circular economy can be really implemented. They want to have the integration to the labor market, especially of people of risk of exclusion. They want to offer training, education, always based on the green economy. They want to offer contents for education, for traditional education, and they want to come to be a place where students of schools and universities can learn about real circular economy processes. They want to arise awareness and understanding for the whole society what is the circular economy and how can it be, how can we achieve products and services that are able to be positively impacting in the environmental and social approach and regenerating natural and social capital. They want to serve as a rural circular economy business models for other businesses. It is also important to collaborate with large companies to create joint projects for new products and to introduce these concepts from the startup, from the SME, from JOSENEA to a more traditional large company. They have a lot to learn mutually, so it is very important the collaboration between companies, business. They want to prevent rural depopulation. Of course, by now it's difficult to find productive models more than just farming or agriculture. It is very interesting to have business in rural areas, creating products and services. They want to establish long-term relationships with other European projects, with other European living labs. They are very interested in taking part. For example, if a new proposal is under development, of course, JOSENEA will be much more than interested in taking part as partner. They want to create, to build, to participate in this European network because we have to exchange experiences, we have to exchange knowledge, and we have to share this information among all the society and all the regions in Europe. They want to achieve 15,000 people visiting their facilities, and of course around the world. They have already visited from Asia. They have a lot of requests for visiting their facilities. Because of COVID crisis, of course, has been much more difficult, but they are also working on building the training or the offer it as well. And of course, they want to give knowledge for the young people so that the participation of schools is key to build a new knowledge of our society. And of course, they want to build these training modules and to be introduced at traditional learning process at schools. And of course, that to be integrated in the society with those people that others say that they don't have the value in our society. And those are the key persons that are making possible this living lab. And I think that's all.
Thanks. thanks to both of you for this insight into your living lab. I think it's really good to see how the RAIN concept and the approaches that the LIVERUR project developed is already being exploited and used by other pilot areas and by other regions, by other players, by other actors, and that have also different focus area than, for example, the example we had been presented today from Austria. So it's really good to see also the diversity that is possible through this approach. And speaking about the diversity of approaches regarding living labs, I'm very pleased that Kevin Collins will join us now. Kevin Collins is a representative of the AgriLink project, which is a project that also deals with living labs and is implementing them in also rural settings, in agriculture setting, in a few pilot regions. And I'm already very eager to get to know a bit more on how they experienced the living lab concept in their project and what they made out of it. So Kevin, please go on with your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you very much for inviting us. I'm very pleased to talk about AgriLink insights on living labs. So I'm Kevin Collins. I'm from the Open University in the UK. And so I'm representing the whole of the AgriLink project, but obviously just talking about AgriLink living labs today. AgriLink was focused on innovation in agriculture advisory services, 16 partners from 13 countries comprising universities, research institutes, public-private advisors, farmer-based organizations, project management, and you can see on the screen some of the groups, the consortia that was involved. Of course, there's plenty more information on our AgriLink website, and the link is at the bottom of that screen. AgriLink was about addressing knowledge gaps in 4 key areas, as you can see on screen, about farmers' use and needs and advice and knowledge, advisory services, innovation in services, and that's where the Living Labs was positioned, and then effectiveness of public policy. Now, I'm only going to be talking about the Living Labs today, but of course, there's much more to the AgriLink project than I will be able to convey. So the key question for us as an academic research project, as well as a practitioner project, was, are living labs appropriate settings and means for development of innovation support services to contribute to learning and innovation for a more sustainable agriculture? So that was our underlying question for all of the things that we were doing in relation to living labs. So we've been taking quite a critical perspective on living labs. And we were looking at 6 living labs that were established for AgriLink or continued for AgriLink. They were looking at maize cultivation in the Netherlands and Belgium area. We were looking at rebuilding a local farm, local food community in Italy, crop rotation between farms in Norway, enabling farmers to find more information more easily in Latvia, bringing advisory services actually onto farms in Navarre in Spain, and then also helping farmers access and understand the fiscal environment that they needed to operate in order to access better markets. And that was the case study in Romania. I'm not going to talk about the detail of any of these. What I'm going to try and take is a high-level view of our learning across these living labs. And our learning comes from a really important aspect of what we did in AgriLink. The project AgriLink finishes at the end of this year, so we are at the very end of our thinking and development of ideas. We established a very strong monitoring and evaluation process of the living labs, and that was informed by design thinking and systems thinking. And we established a monitor in each living lab, and that monitor was engaged in a series of reflection processes that were each living lab monitor was reporting into AgriLink. So we were always having monitoring reports of how the living labs were progressing and developing. We also had reflection sessions in our consortium meetings to enable us to sort of develop all the analysis and lessons learned, both across in a living lab, between the living labs, and at a meta level across the living labs. And we were doing so using some systems ideas around the 3 E's of evaluation: efficacy, efficiency, and effectiveness. And I'll talk about those next. Now, this is a complicated slide. Just focusing on the middle, we see those 3 E's: efficacy, efficiency, and effective. Did the living lab achieve its purpose? Did it use resources well? Not just money, but all of the resources, people resources. And did it achieve a higher level contribution to AgriLink, i.e. more sustainable forms of agriculture, innovation and advisory services? And we found that living labs where there was a complex situation, where there was upfront financial investment and also people investment, and when there was a critical understanding of living labs as a new form of innovation services for agricultural knowledge, these things were made living labs more effective, more efficient, and greater efficacy. They were less efficacious and less efficient and less effective when the living labs were just focusing on small scale issues, where there was quite technical discussions, and where there was lack of a connection to an external goal. Living labs which don't connect to some kind of policy or strategy environment do find it more difficult to sort of continue their life and also to expand their operation. So from all of our learning, we've identified 4 key conditions for living labs, and I'm sure this will resonate with what I've heard so far with previous speakers. There needs to be a complex challenge. That needs to be in place in order to justify a living lab. So whilst you need complexity, you also need harmony and some sense of willingness to work in collaboration, to co-creation. So this is quite a sweet spot between lots of complexity and perhaps controversy, but also some sense of harmony to build towards a living lab. There needs to be an enabling setting. You need some kind of space to enable interaction and experimentation to take place. This is almost prior to a living lab, because the living lab itself is an experiment. So you need some kind of platform or something in order to enable that to begin. There also needs to be energy to move. Stakeholders need to be willing to work on a situation. They may not have the answers, that's fine, but they need to have some energy with identifying a problem. Yeah, we want to change. And then there needs to be methodological preparation. This is really, really, really important in our experience, because without clear facilitation processes and without clear monitoring and evaluation, living labs can function, but you won't necessarily know that you're getting value for money, that they are being effective or being efficacious. So there are plenty of do's for living labs that we've identified. I'm not going to talk about them all here, but they're on screen if you wanted to come back to them. But just the top 3 or 4. Being realistic about a living lab, it's not a magic ingredient. We found that. You need to be adaptive, learning. There needs to be a learning kind of culture within a living lab, and being open to surprises. Monitoring and reflection is really key in order to help the living lab develop in the way that the stakeholders want it to develop, and also being efficient. Skilled and knowledgeable facilitation, everyone's talked about that already, and obviously the importance of trust in living lab relationships. I won't go for the rest of those do's, there are plenty more, but some of the don'ts of living labs. We found that language of living labs was quite off-putting to many farmers or advisors. They didn't like it, so we tended to avoid the language of living labs. But we also we also found that you need to make mistakes and you can change focus. So don't be afraid of doing that, and don't be afraid of intervening and guiding, controlling the process. Equally, don't do a living lab on your own if you can avoid it, because there's a lot to be learned from other experiences. And perhaps the most important is don't assume living labs are the answer, because they're not always. They are very helpful processes in the right context, where there's complexity and willingness to move, but not necessarily always. I'm just going to touch very briefly on a point that came out a lot of questions around us. The people in the living labs that in our case study saying, this is great, we're really enjoying it. How can we do it somewhere? How can we expand this process? And we were quite resistant to just taking the idea of replication or knowledge and practice transfer and just putting the same things in a different context, which of course is open to critique and failure. However, we do see scaling up of living labs as possible in these sort of 4 or 5 areas I've identified on screen. The boundary of the topic can expand. Firstly, you can be talking about irrigation, but then you can be talking about soil quality, and then you can be talking about tillage, farming practices on the farm, then you can be talking about a whole range of flood things or drought, etc., etc. So the boundary can expand very quickly. Equally, the number of participants can be expanded. The geography, so you can be looking at just a farm or a sort of small rural area or a catchment or a region and so on. But perhaps the two most interesting were the last two bullet points here. The practices and identities of the people in the Living Lab started to expand. They didn't just see themselves as farmers working on a farm. They saw themselves as part of a wider network of people working in the land to bring about more sustainable agriculture. And therefore their identities, who they were and what they were doing, was beginning to change. And corresponding to that, their skills and capacities were also developing and changing and being able to accommodate new ideas more quickly. All of our learning is being consolidated and presented on an online course, which we at the Open University, we're experts in writing online open courses. And so we've written one for Living Labs, which brings together all of our learning from the AgriLink project. This is open, free. It's 10 hours study, it's self-guided, and it allows you to kind of go through some of our experiences of Living Labs and distill some of the learning that we've engaged with a view to not necessarily giving you the answers, but at least giving you insights into why Living Labs work in the way they do based on our experience. And of course, your context and experiences will vary, but this provides something from AgriLink to the wider community. So on that note, I will say thank you very much for your attention. And again, thank you for the invitation to present to LIVERUR, and hopefully this will be the start of a good conversation.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks a lot for your presentation. I think you made some very good points. I think a lot of your experiences that you have shared kind of are reflected in our LIVERUR approach, I would say. Especially I was intrigued by your evaluation slide, which I found quite interesting. So to kind of try to narrow down where the Living Lab approach works better and where it maybe works not so good. So I think that's something that we could also quite neatly discuss with the experiences that we have made. So maybe we can have a further exchange on this, because I think it could be a useful framework. And well, just maybe as we have still 9 minutes left, and I would be really interested in your perspectives on this, I would like to ask you, because you mentioned in the Living Lab implementation that, creating some kind of harmony or kind of, working together for the common goal is something important. What we often experienced was that there is also tension. There are conflicting interests in some of these fields that we're working in, especially when you're trying to do something that is green and sustainable. There are maybe incumbents in the sector who are a bit hesitant to share some of these goals. So did you have any similar experiences? And if yes, how did you deal with it?
Yes, we did. We had many of those experiences. I think the most important element of that was acknowledging that there are differences and being absolutely upfront that those differences exist. You can only work with the people that are willing to work with you, or are willing to work with themselves as a group, and to take on board the invitation from an outsider to say, can we help? Is there things that we can develop here with you to help you develop that? Those people who resist may connect later when they see that the Living Lab or similar is working. But equally, there are some people who were very resistant, because the Living Lab, in some senses, challenged their roles. And we found this with some advisors, that they saw the Living Lab as a challenge to their expertise and their role in relation to the farmer, providing advice, one-to-one type advice. Taking that role into a Living Lab where there's a more collective environment and information is being exchanged, potentially undermined their role and their sort of skills, or not skills, but their role and their capacity and value to the farmer. So there was some resistance there. That's absolutely true. And all you can do there is hopefully build trusting relationships and setting out clearly what the Living Lab can do and what the Living Lab can't do, but equally allowing people to have the freedom to work in their own way in the Living Lab. The Living Lab should not be a constraint. It's an open innovation process. And so it should be reasonably open enough to accommodate people's different interests. And it cannot provide, the Living Lab is not the solution. It provides a space for exploring the solution. It's a co-creative space. And so you can't take responsibility for people who simply don't want to be in that space.
Yeah. Okay, that's very good words, I think, to give an answer to that question. We had to actually, I think our experiences are quite similar, and the thing that you mentioned at the end, that it's important to have a clear picture of what the Living Lab can provide, and that is something that we as a project also struggled a bit internally at the beginning. It took some time to figure it out. It took some time to figure it out in the regional context, because not all pilot regions are the same, and they might need different things from a Living Lab. They might need different things from this co-creative kind of space. So it was also important to clarify to them, okay, this is kind of the set and the frame and the approach that we offer. We have to see how it is implemented in your region. We have to do this together with your stakeholders, and we have to do it targeted to your regional needs. And that is something that worked for us, and that's how we managed to kind of also get to some good results in the pilot areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd completely agree. I think one of the things that we found, if I've got a moment, one of the things that we found was that it took time for the Living Labs agenda and direction and sense of purpose to evolve. And it did change. I mean, there were some times where, you know, the facilitator went in thinking we're going to be looking at this, but actually what the farmers and other advisors wanted, no, we need to move to this. And so there was always this potential tension between the facilitators and the people in the Living Labs. And once the facilitators realized they'd made a mistake, they said, oh, okay, we thought it was going to be this, but actually you want us to go with over here for a different project area and different theme or different purpose. Once that was acknowledged, it worked. In fact, it was actually an important part of building trust to acknowledge that things could change and people could have different sets of expectations that would develop over time.
Definitely. We saw that in a lot of pilot areas, that focus really shifted throughout the three and a half years of the project. And I think when we talk about Living Labs and open innovation, then that's only natural that this kind of evolves throughout the time period.
Absolutely. And if it didn't work like that, then you'd have to say there's probably something to fix about the Living Lab.
Okay, well, then I think our time is up more or less. And thanks for joining us again, Kevin. It was really, really good talking to you. And I can only say LIVERUR project is open to further conversations to bring our projects to a good end, and to maybe keep this spirit ongoing, and to promote Living Labs further on. So thanks for joining us, and also thanks to all of the audience for joining us today. I hope that you had some good takeaways from today, and yeah, just stay updated. Our LIVERUR social media channels are always communicating, and you will be kept up to date on our latest results and outcomes and events. So thank you for joining, and see you soon.